All right, so this is going to be my review of Gargoyles Fantastic Four. Multi, I hear you say, but you already did this. No, that was Fantastic Four Gargoyles. This is the age-old Marvel does. Marvel did one. Now Dynamite gets to do one. This is, of course, written again by Greg Weisman, and was supposed. I feel like it was meant to be like a sequel. It is a kind of sequel to the first book. But there are some plot lines that get left out, like in the in the first part, we get a thing of like Marvel's Gargoyle superhero joins the Manhattan Clan. Yeah, he's not here, so what was even the point of that? And there were a few other plot lines that get left behind. Like, it feels like it's a loose connection to the first one. It's just, I feel like the only connection is the Gargoyles and the Fantastic Four. They now know about each other, and they're going to be friends now. And that's really the whole book. Anyway, so this has multiple plot lines going on, and none of them really make sense. So the first plot line is Broadway, Angela, Ben, and Johnny. After meeting with the the Labyrinth Clan, they discover that Mole Man's been tunneling up through the Labyrinth Clan territory, so they go to stop them. Meanwhile, back at the Baxter Building, the rest of the Fantastic Four and the Manhattan Clan are on their way to help give back, backup to the team. So while that's going on, Nash, Brooklyn's son, who he had with Katana, it was a whole thing in the slave labor graphic books. Nash is left with Franklin and Valeria, who are left behind in the Baxter Building that gets infiltrated by another villain called the Gargoyle, who is a Fantastic Four villain, and his son, the Gremlin. These guys are kind of tied to more of Hulk and Iron Man than they are the Fantastic Four, because they were both Titanium Man. And they're also working with Cold Steel. Why? I ask myself that question too, because literally the plot they have, which is really dumb, and I will get to it in a moment, really could have been done without Cold Steel. Like, none of it, like, at least the Diablo Xanatos team up, it made relative sense as to why Xanatos was working with Diablo. Mostly because Diablo was going to make he was going to use a way to make Xanatos immortal. And that made sense, even though the whole thing with throwing in Dragon Man in here in that story it was just like, oh, he's a distraction. But yeah. And again, I guess Greg Weisman really likes Dragon Man, because like he's not only in here again, I like Dragon Man too, so I get it. But like Dragon Man is a vital part of this, because the whole story is the Titanium Men go into the negative zone with Cold Steel. Cold Steel helps them get into the negative zone through the Baxter Building, and they make a deal with Annihilus that they're going to give him Dragon Man to conquer the negative zone. To that, I was immediately like, scusi? The plot makes no sense. Like, when did Annihilus... Dragon Man's pretty powerful, but I wouldn't call him a WMD. I wouldn't, by no stretch of the imagination, call Dragon Man like a weapon of mass destruction. He's pretty strong, but he's not... And also, Annihilus is pretty powerful on his own. He also is the ruler of a majority of the negative zone. What was Dragon Man supposed to do against Annihilus's negative zone rival Blastar? Nothing. Not only that, he has an army. What is Dragon Man going to do? And again, I feel like Gremlin and Gargoyle's scheme, like, why were they working with Annihilus? Well, Annihilus offered them the raw material to make adamantium. And to that, I'm like, at no point has adamantium ever come from the negative zone, let alone material from it. Like, adamantium comes from somewhere else, but, like, it ain't from the negative zone. So that, I was like, what? And I guess, again, they wanted the adamantium, and Cold Steel wanted it too, I guess to upgrade his body, but they never bring that up. At least, maybe I missed that, but yeah. So I guess that was what Cold Steel wanted, was the raw material to make adamantium, but it never come from the negative zone. On top of that, you've also got, like, Lockjaw suddenly shows up. Why? Because, yeah. Meanwhile, we're still dealing with, by the way, just they cut back every so often to, Broadway and the others dealing with the Mole Man and his monsters. And you'd think it would be a problem, but no, it'd be super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Same with fighting the Titanium Men. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. That's this whole comic. That is literally this whole comic is it's super easy, barely an inconvenience. Yeah, the artwork's okay too. I mean, some of the you've got like cool designs for like Mole Man's monsters. And there's some sketchiness to a lot of and there's a lot of overexpression to them. And I do like that, again, this is Greg Weisman writing, so he knows his stuff. In here, you have him battling Cold Steel, and he actually makes reference to, hey, I've already fought you before, Cold Steel. And Cold Steel's like, what? It's a reference because in the far future, Brooklyn does battle Cold Steel during his Time Dancer stuff, dumping a lot of Gargoyles lore. But yeah, the comics just, I definitely like the first one a little more. This one is just like, how much stuff can Greg Weisman dump into one book? That really, it feels like what we're dealing with here is, how much stuff can Greg Weisman force into a single comic? And I gotta tell you, it doesn't exactly work. The plan makes even less sense than, or the plot, the supervillain plot makes way less sense than Diablo's overcomplicated one involving Grey Gargoyle, Dragon Man, Xanatos, and it's also like one of those things like I talked about in the first comic where certain elements have to work in order for this plot to work, be executed. Like, what if Gremlin and Gargoyle got, they immediately got noticed, not just by Franklin, who discovers them. What if it was Reed? Also, how did they get into the Baxter building without, proper scans? Top of that, what was the point of Cold Steel? Because you could have used any villain at that point. Any Gargoyle villain or what have you. And also, like, what if Dragon Man wasn't in the building? Also, how did you reach out to Nihilus in the first place because it's such a hard way to get into the negative zone to begin with? How did you set up this deal to begin with a Nihilus? Because the only way to get into the negative zone is in the Baxter building. I mean, don't get me wrong, Annihilus is one of my favorite villains to see out of Fantastic Four, but, like, the plot's really difficult unless I'm missing some stuff. All in all, And it sucks, too, because I really like I'm a big fan of Greg Weisman and Gargoyles, and this was a pretty unique crossover, but let's be real, we all just wanted Spider-Man Gargoyles, and maybe we will get that soon. I am interested, and maybe it's because they were one-and-done books. Maybe they were meant to be 4-issue miniseries. I feel like if both of these comics were both of these series 4 issues each, I feel like we'd have a little more to them. And I'm hoping the Darkwing Duck Gargoyles crossover, which is, yes, a thing, hopefully that gets it gets a chance to breathe with its 4 issues, but we'll see. Anyway, like the first one better. But you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think if you've read Gargoyles Fantastic Four? Let me know in the comments below. Other than that, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.